Let me ask you something. Have you ever stood in a room full of people and still felt completely invisible? Have you ever laid your head down at night, your body exhausted but your soul wide awake, haunted by the silence of heaven? I have. I've been there, in that darkness. The kind of silence where your prayers echo back at you like whispers in an empty cave. I've screamed into pillows, begged God for answers, and wondered if I was being punished or simply forgotten. But hear me now. Something happens when your knees hit the floor and your pride hits the grave. Something shifts in the atmosphere when your soul stops striving and starts surrendering. That's when the real transformation begins. That's when everything changes. When you put God first, we're taught to chase success, to grind, to rise, to conquer, but no one tells you that success without peace is just another prison. No one warns you that you can have a full bank account and still feel bankrupt inside. I used to think I was the author of my own destiny, that I could outwork pain, outsmart betrayal, run emptiness. But the truth, I was building towers without a foundation. I was striving but not surrendering. I was running on fumes, emotionally rich, spiritually broke, until one day it all came crashing down. And in that silence, in that devastation, I heard the whisper of God for the very first time. When you finally let me lead, I'll take you where your strength never could. Putting God first is not a slogan. It's not a bumper sticker. It's not just something you post on Instagram with a pretty filter and a Bible verse. It's a war cry. It's a total surrender. It means dying to self, not just in theory, but in reality. It means putting purpose before profit, obedience before opinion, worship before worry, trust before trauma. Because here's the truth I learned the hard way. When God is not first, everything is out of order. But when God is first, peace reigns, even in the storm. I met a man once, an old Palestinian pastor. We were sitting in the rubble of what used to be a home. The sky was smoke, the air smelled like loss. He looked at me with the deepest eyes I've ever seen, like they'd seen centuries of suffering, and still refused to blink. He said something I'll never forget. The world took my land. They bombed my streets. They tried to break my family, but they can't steal my soul, because my soul belongs to God. He is first. And when He is first, even ashes can bloom. Even ashes can bloom. That man had lost everything except his faith. And that faith, it made him unbreakable. That's what putting God first looks like. It's not comfort. It's not ease. It's courage. It's fire-tested faith. It's peace in the middle of war. You want to find your identity. Start with the one who created you. You want to heal from betrayal, heartbreak, abuse? Run to the one who was betrayed, broken, and bruised for you. You want power? Put God first. Because there is no power like the power of purpose. No strength like the strength of surrender. You can spend your life chasing validation, or you can anchor yourself in truth. The world will label you too much, too little, too loud, too broken. But when you put God first, those labels fall like lies in the face of eternal truth. Because God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. And when you're walking with Him, not ahead of Him, not behind Him, but with Him, every step becomes sacred. Every battle becomes a setup for breakthrough. Every loss becomes fertilizer for divine restoration. I've seen miracles, not just the kind that make headlines, but the quiet kind. the heart healing after trauma, the mind finding peace after torment, the soul standing tall after being shattered. Miracles like mothers in Gaza whispering prayers over their children while bombs fall from the sky. Because faith is louder than fear. Miracles like men behind bars who've met God in the silence and walk with more freedom than millionaires. Miracles like you listening right now, on the edge of giving up, on the verge of breaking down, and yet something in you is still reaching, still hoping, still believing. That's not weakness. That's evidence. That's proof of a soul that hasn't given up on its creator. When you put God first, your identity is no longer tied to your trauma. Your past doesn't get the final say. Your pain doesn't get to rewrite your purpose. Because God doesn't just restore. He resurrects. He takes what the enemy meant for evil, the abuse, the abandonment, the addiction, the depression, the diagnosis, and he uses it as the canvas for your calling, but only if he's first, not second, not on Sundays, not when it's convenient. First, before the paycheck, before the applause, before the relationship, before the revenge, before the likes, the views, the validation. When he's first, you stop chasing and start receiving. You stop performing and start becoming. You stop hiding and start healing. I used to think God wanted perfection, but now I know he just wants position. He wants first place, because from first place, he can heal everything that's out of order. And listen, this is not prosperity preaching. This is not some empty promise that life gets easy when you get holy. Sometimes it gets harder. Sometimes putting God first means walking away from what you thought you needed. Sometimes it means walking through fire while trusting that you won't burn. Sometimes it means being misunderstood, mislabeled, and misjudged, and still choosing obedience. But even when it's hard, it's holy. Even when it hurts, it heals. Even when it breaks you, it builds you. To the students chasing purpose, to the single mothers praying in secret, to the truth seekers drowning in lies, to the Palestinians still standing in the smoke of injustice, to the soul warriors out there who refuse to quit, put God first, not because it's easy, but because it's eternal, not because it makes sense, but because it makes you whole. Because when you put him first, you start to see with different eyes. You stop measuring your life by what you've lost and start walking in the power of what cannot be taken. So here's my final cry to your spirit. Put God first, not just with your words, with your life, with your mornings, with your decisions, with your broken pieces. Give him everything, even the ugly parts, even the messy chapters, even the pain you thought was permanent. Because the moment you put him first, the chains fall, the peace flows, the clarity comes, the fire ignites, and you'll finally understand the truth. Have you ever felt forgotten by God? Because breakthrough begins where brokenness speaks the loudest. The moment I let go and let God lead. When surrender replaced striving and heaven finally answered. You can't find yourself until you find the one who made you. Because identity is not discovered, it's revealed through divine connection. Ashes can bloom. What a Palestinian pastor taught me about unshakable faith. Even when the world takes everything, heaven still gives peace. God doesn't want perfection. He wants position. Put him first and watch the chaos in your life start to bow down. Put God first and everything else will fall into place or fall away. Not all losses are punishment. Some are preparation for divine restoration. Have you ever cried so hard that the tears didn't even feel like water anymore? They felt like pieces of your soul pouring out? I have. There was a time in my life when I prayed until my voice cracked, fasted until my body weakened, believed until I had nothing left, and still heaven was silent. I kept asking God, where are you? But all I got back was a quiet so loud it made me question if he ever listened in the first place. That kind of silence, it doesn't just sting, it scars. It makes you feel abandoned, invisible, forgotten. But here's what I learned in that dark silence. God's silence is not God's absence. And just because you don't hear him doesn't mean he isn't working behind the scenes. Sometimes his silence is sacred. It's the space where your faith grows legs. It's the moment when your strength runs out and your spirit finally begins to rise. See, I didn't realize it at the time, but God wasn't ignoring me. He was rearranging me, stripping away my pride, my control, my illusions, until all that was left was me and him. Nothing else to lean on, nothing else to prove, just raw, desperate dependence. That's when I started to change. Not instantly, not with fireworks or miracles, but slowly, like a sunrise creeping over the horizon of a long, dark night. I stopped begging God to show up in the way I expected, and I started trusting that he already had a plan better than my pain. I stopped asking, why me, and started whispering, use me. Because the very place I thought God had forgotten me, that's where he was forming me, right there in the silence, in the loneliness, in the tears no one else saw. If you're in that place right now, feeling unseen, unheard, unworthy, hear me clearly. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible to the one who formed you in your mother's womb. He hasn't left you. He's just getting you ready. Don't walk away from the silence. Walk deeper into it, because that silence, it's not empty, it's sacred. It's where everything you were pretending to be dies, so who God made you to be can finally live. There came a day when I hit my limit, not physically, emotionally, spiritually. I was tired of pretending to be strong while breaking on the inside. I was exhausted from trying to be my own savior. And in that moment, that ugly, vulnerable moment, I did something I had never fully done before. I stopped performing, and I let go. I told God, I don't have the answers. I don't even know who I am anymore. But I'm done running. I want you to lead. And that surrender, that quiet whisper from a weary heart, changed everything. You think surrender looks weak, that it's about giving up, but real surrender, it's the strongest thing you'll ever do. It means trusting God when there's no evidence yet. It means stepping out of the driver's seat even when your hands are shaking. That day, I handed God the wheel, and something inside me broke. In the best way possible. The striving stopped, the panic quieted, and in its place came this deep, unfamiliar peace. Not because everything around me changed, but because I did. I had finally chosen faith over control. And let me tell you, when God leads, it's different. He doesn't rush. He doesn't manipulate. He doesn't shame you. He heals while he guides. He restores while he moves. Suddenly, the things I thought I needed didn't matter anymore. The people I thought I had to impress faded into the background, and the wounds I was hiding started to feel safe enough to surface. That's what happens when you finally let God lead. You don't just survive, you start to breathe. You stop fighting for peace and start living from it. Maybe you're at that edge too, the place where your own strength is no longer enough. That's not your failure, that's your turning point. That's the doorway to everything new. Don't be afraid to let go. Don't be afraid to say, God, I don't want to lead anymore, I want to follow. Because in that surrender, you'll find your strength. In that release, you'll find your restoration. And in that moment, maybe even this moment, heaven will begin to move, not because you tried harder, but because you trusted deeper. For the longest time, I tried to find myself in all the wrong places, in people's opinions, in performance, in pain. I thought if I achieved more, they'd respect me. If I looked a certain way, they'd accept me. If I stayed quiet about my hurt, I'd be strong. But all I became was a stranger to myself. Someone wearing a mask, playing a role, clinging to approval like oxygen. And no matter how hard I tried to fit in, deep down I still felt empty. Until I realized I'd been looking for my identity in broken mirrors, reflections that could never tell me who I really was. Everything changed the moment I stopped asking the world to tell me who I was and started asking God. I remember sitting alone, tears running down my face, whispering, "Who am I, Lord?" And instead of a list of flaws or failures, He gave me truth. Truth that shattered the lies. Truth that said, "You are mine, you are chosen. You are not your trauma. You are not your reputation. You are not what they did to you." That moment was more than healing. It was rebirth. Because when you know who you are in God, you stop needing the world's validation to feel worthy. And that identity, it anchors you. When the storms come, and they will, it holds you steady. When people leave, when titles fade, when beauty changes and seasons shift, your identity in Christ remains unshaken. You're not defined by your failures or your success, not by your past or your pain. You are defined by the one who created you, on purpose, for a purpose. And when you finally see yourself through His eyes, you stop shrinking. You stop pretending. You start rising. So to the one out there who's been performing, comparing, hiding, losing yourself to be liked, hear me. You're already enough. You don't have to earn God's love. You just have to receive it. You don't have to chase identity. It's already been written into your soul. But you won't find it in applause, approval, or achievement. You'll only find it in the stillness, where God whispers, "You are mine." And that, my friend, is the identity that changes everything. I sat across from him, surrounded by broken walls, shattered glass, and silence that screamed louder than any bomb. He was a Palestinian pastor, old, weathered, eyes full of 1,000 stories, most of them drenched in loss. We didn't speak the same language fluently, but pain doesn't need translation. Neither does faith. He looked at me, the sky behind him still holding the smoke of war, and he said something I'll never forget. "They can take my house, they can take my land, but they cannot take my God." In that moment, I understood something about strength I had never known before. This man had every reason to curse God, to walk away, to give up on hope. His family had suffered, his country torn apart, yet his faith was still standing, not because life was fair, not because he had comfort, but because God was still first. And when God is first, even rubble can become sacred ground. Even in devastation, there is purpose. Even in ashes, there is life. I felt my own excuses dissolve in his presence. My quiet complaints about unanswered prayers suddenly seemed so small. His resilience spoke louder than any sermon I'd ever heard. That moment broke something in me and healed me at the same time. I realized I had been worshiping a convenient God, a God who I expected to show up in the way I wanted, when I wanted. But this man worshiped a sovereign God, a faithful God, a God who was worthy even when life was not easy. And in that realization, something in me shifted. I no longer wanted comfort, I wanted conviction. I no longer prayed just for blessings, I prayed for boldness. Because if he could worship in war, I could praise in pain. To you listening now, maybe your life feels like rubble. Maybe you're staring at loss, betrayal, injustice, and asking, where is God? Let me tell you, he is right there. Not in the absence of the fire, but in the middle of it. And when you put him first, truly, relentlessly first, you'll discover a faith that cannot be stolen, a strength that cannot be shaken, a peace that doesn't make sense and yet never leaves. That's what I saw in that pastor's eyes, and that's what I pray rises in you. An unshakable faith, born in the ashes. They used to think God was looking for perfection, that he only used people who had it all together, the clean, the confident, the strong. So I tried to be that. I polished the outside, hid the mess, smiled through the struggle. I thought if I performed well enough, prayed hard enough, acted holy enough, maybe then God would finally use me. But no matter how much I tried, I still felt far, still felt like I was never enough, until one day God whispered something into the quiet of my soul that shattered every lie. I'm not asking for perfection, I'm asking for position. That truth hit me so deep I couldn't stop weeping, because all that time I thought I had to be flawless to be faithful. But God isn't waiting for you to clean yourself up before he moves. He's waiting for you to come close. He's not looking at your scars saying, fix that first. He's saying, bring it to me. Position your heart toward me. And that's when things started shifting in my life. Not because I became perfect, but because I started putting God in his rightful place first. First in my decisions, first in my relationships, first in my failures, first in my healing. You see, when you put God first, the weight you were never meant to carry starts falling off. The pressure to pretend breaks. The fear of rejection weakens. And what's left? Peace, clarity, identity. Because when God is at the center, everything else starts finding its place or falling away. I stopped chasing approval. I stopped striving for applause. I just positioned myself at his feet and said, here I am, Lord, not perfect, but present. And he showed me that's all he ever wanted, my presence, my surrender, my heart turned toward him. If you're listening right now and thinking you're too broken, too behind, too messy for God to use, you're exactly who he's looking for. He doesn't need your perfection. He wants your position, your heart, your yes. He can heal what's broken, restore what's lost, redeem what feels ruined. But he won't force his way in. You have to put him first. Not when things are better, not when you feel worthy, now, right now. Because the moment you shift your position, heaven starts to move. I used to think putting God first meant everything would instantly fall into place. Like puzzle pieces finally clicking together, pain suddenly disappearing, doors swinging wide open. But what I didn't understand then was this. When you put God first, everything doesn't always fall into place the way you expect. Sometimes it falls apart first, and that's not a punishment, that's protection. God starts removing what was never meant to stay. He starts stripping away the counterfeit so you can receive the real, and yes, it hurts. But that hurt is holy. When I finally gave God full authority over my life, not just the Sunday version of me, but the broken, doubting, controlled, obsessed version, things began to shift. At first, I lost some people. I lost some comfort. I lost the illusion that I was in control. But what I gained was peace. Not surface level, feel good for a minute peace. I'm talking about deep, unshakable, I can't explain it peace. The kind that shows up in the storm, the kind that whispers, even this will be used for your good. Because when you put God first, everything that doesn't align with his purpose must fall away. And that's not loss. It took me a long time to realize that sometimes God's blessings don't come in addition but in subtraction. He removes the noise so you can hear his voice. He breaks your plans so you can receive his. He closes the doors you begged him to open because he knows what's on the other side would have destroyed you. And yes, it hurts to let go. But it's far more painful to hold on to what God is trying to free you from. I had to learn that faith isn't just trusting God to give. It's trusting him when he takes away. So if you've put God first and now everything feels like it's falling apart, don't panic. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. God is building something deeper in you. Something that can't be shaken by applause, abandoned by people, or destroyed by circumstance. Let it fall away. Let him rearrange what you were afraid to release. Because when you truly put God first, everything changes. Not always in the way you want, but always in the way you need. So here you are, standing in the wreckage of what you thought life would be. Maybe bruised, maybe doubting, maybe holding on by a single thread of hope. But listen to me. That's enough. That little thread, that whisper of faith, that tired breath saying, God, I still trust you. That's where heaven rushes in. That's where everything changes. Because when you put God first, you don't just invite blessing. You awaken destiny. You unlock peace that doesn't make sense, strength that isn't your own, and healing in the very place you thought you'd never recover. You stop chasing people who were never meant to go with you. You stop begging for scraps when your father already set a table. You rise, not perfectly, but powerfully, and that's more than enough. God isn't asking you to be fearless. He's asking you to be faithful. To put him first in your tears, in your fears, in your waiting, in your wondering. And when you do, watch what he does. Watch how he turns your ashes into altars, your pain into purpose, your silence into song. This isn't the end. This is the becoming. The breaking was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal you. So don't go back. Don't shrink. Don't settle. Put God first, and everything will change. Maybe not all at once, maybe not how you imagined, but exactly how your soul has always needed. Because when God is first, nothing can stay the same.